Ciao ragazzi e benvenuti alla settimana 8. Wow, la settimana 8 già. Come vuole il tempo, no? So here we are, a quick overview of what's coming this week. We have our Salve activities, which we'll look at shortly, some new vocabulary, and some new grammar structures, the usual partner work in Salve, your iLearn homework on the iLearn website. This week we have something completely new, your oral evaluation, which hopefully you've been doing your partner exercises throughout the term, and this will be an easy assignment for you because you've been practicing. We have our last video log, and then finally we have your response to the video log number 4 that you'll be replying to. Also in this week's chapter or week 8 folder is your portfolio assignment, which isn't due until next week, but it's a large assignment, so if I hope everyone has started it, but if you haven't, you definitely need to get started on it this week so you won't be overwhelmed next week. And then your video log 5 information is here. So let's take a look quickly at what's coming in the new information in the textbook. First of all, we have brand new vocabulary that's all about food. It starts on page 88. This is an exciting chapter for me since I love food. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Remember that the little red button, if you mouse over it, you can see all the words that you can click on and hear the pronunciation of. So use your ebook if you're not sure how to pronounce some of these words. Fungi is one that trips people up a lot because of that GHI combination. Not too many other unusual sound combinations. You will find some words that come directly from English, like il toast, which is sort of funny. And then there's a whole list of different foods that are associated with different parts of an Italian meal. If you've never had an authentic Italian meal, it has to do with a lot of different plates. The first time I ate one, I pigged out on the appetizers because it seemed like a meal and there were 4 more courses to come, so I was exploding by the end, which was not a complaint. So you can see some typical primo piatto dishes, secondo piatto, il contorno, and il dessert, which is always a favorite of mine too. And then if we go to, let me flip back to Blackboard. Okay, and then on pages 92 through 94, we have our new grammar structures. So we've already looked at in this class the AR verbs, and now we're going to look at ERE and IRE verbs, so ere and ire verbs, which are quite similar to are verbs. They just have different endings. And this week we'll just see the regular verbs. So we have our ere verbs, which will follow the same pattern that's shown here with scrivere. So all the yo endings will be just an O, io scrivo. All 2 forms of regular ere verbs will end in an I. Tu scrivi, lei, lui, lei scrive, noi scriviamo, voi scrivete, loro scrivono. So you'll notice the only real difference between ere verbs and between are verbs and ere ire verbs are in the loro form, the they form. So if you'll remember in verbs like parlare, it's parlano, so you have the ANO instead of the ONO endings that you see with regular ere and ire verbs. And also the ete, and remember in the AR verbs you have parlate, you have that ate ending, whereas with ER verbs, ete, IR verbs, ite. But the other forms will be the same. All yo verbs, all verbs in the yo form, whether it's ere, ire, or are, will end in o, and the same with all tu verbs end in I, etc. So that's pretty straightforward. Our book gives us a nice list of verbs that are pretty common in the ere category: chiedere, chiudere, credere, leggere, perdere, prendere. ricevere, ripetere, rispondere, scrivere, vedere, e vivere. And you'll notice with rispondere, it takes the preposition a. So do pay attention when your book lists a preposition. It's better just to memorize the preposition with the verb. So when you practice it, just think of the verb as rispondere a so that your brain associates that preposition with the verb always and you don't have to try to remember. And then we have a list of common IRE verbs, ire verbs, aprire, dormire, offrire, partire da, seguire, sentire, servire, partire per. So that's another difference to pay attention to when you leave from someplace. Partire da. Parto da casa mia alle 6. As opposed to when you're leaving for someplace, you use the preposition per. Parto per casa tua verso le 4. So that's a small difference to pay attention to. Okay, let's look at a couple other things back in Blackboard. Here is our esame orale folder, which has all the information you need for the esame orale. So once you open this, you'll see some information about how the evaluation works, why we do it, when it's due. It's due Sunday, so you have a little time, but you and your partner do need to be at the same place at the same time to record the oral exam. So I know that can be tricky, but if you're in the practice of meeting with your partner to do your partner exercises, it shouldn't be too big a deal. You are going to be recording this conversation and submitting it as an MP3 document. So you can use the Uber Conference program. There's a link in here that tells you how it works, where to find it. If you know of another program that you like to use for recording a conversation that will allow two people in distant locations to record, then that's perfectly fine. I don't really care. But I know this one works, the Uber Conference. So if you don't already have something in mind, use that. And you can find the instructions both here and here. We'll look at those in just a second. And then if you click here, you'll find the rubric that's going to explain how I'll be grading the midterms or oral evaluations. Midterm sounds scarier. Okay, and then let's see, here's the instructions. So essentially you'll be doing a role play for your oral exam. And you are pretending you're in a cafe in Rome. You're both foreign students. Neither of you speak English, so your only language of communication is Italian. So you're going to have this conversation. There's a list here of all the things you have to include in your conversations. You need to greet each other, ask where you're from using essere, ask how old you are using avere, etc., etc. So make sure you include everything in that list. And here also are some tips. Make sure everybody takes turns asking questions and try to leave some room for improvisation as opposed to a strict script that you need to follow. It comes off more comfortably and naturally for most people that way. So that is your oral exam. If you have any questions, definitely contact me. Your portfolio is due at the end of week 9, so next week. But I just want to briefly look at what's in there so that it doesn't come as a surprise. Sorry, let me just go back to Blackboard. So if you were to click on the portfolio link, you would come in here, you'd have your rubric, you'd have your due date, and if you click here on the portfolio assignment doc, you would come to the instructions, which is what I have open in this document. So this tells you why we're doing it, what the learning outcomes are. So what the portfolio is a visual presentation. What it is not is an essay. So I don't want to get any Word documents with all the questions answered in paragraph form. This should be a visual presentation. At the very bottom of this document, I have a sample link you can use to see a sample portfolio. So let me just go there now and show you what that sample portfolio looks like. I used S'more, which is a free program. You just have to sign up for create a login and a password. But once you do, it's essentially a poster making tool. It's pretty easy. It's pretty intuitive, I thought, and I'm not super technologically savvy, so hopefully you'll feel the same. So here's the portfolio assignment that I put together. So what you need is a description of yourself. I think I asked for maybe 6 adjectives. We'll look at that again in a minute, but you see this brief description. This is me, this is what I do, this is who I am. Here's my picture. So it's definitely a visual project. It is not an essay. Here's my family. Here's a description of my family. I think I ask you to describe someone else. It doesn't have to be someone in your family. I describe my daughter, who is piccola, intelligente, and I describe my husband, who's bravo e molto intelligente, ma non ricco. And then you need to listen to an Italian song. I think it's fun to include a link, so I posted a YouTube link to the song so my classmates can listen to it. And you need to include words that are new that you learned in the song, and then some observations that can be in English. So I talked about how this song reminds me of Manu Chao, how I got curious about the artist and I looked up some more information and I found out he has 12 CDs out. My presentation was on Giovanotti, who's one of my favorite Italian artists. Next, you'll watch a film. You'll give a brief synopsis of the film, what's it about, and then you'll make a list of new words you learned, and you'll make some observations. The observations can be in English, so you can read mine if you're curious about what kinds of observations would work. And the final part of your project is a list of words that go with your area of study. If you're not studying a particular major or you're not in a particular field yet, you can use a hobby you have or an interest you have. I know some of you are opera singers or chefs. You can look up vocabulary that's useful to your career if you already have one. The point is to learn new Italian words that work with either your academic goals or your career goals or even your personal goals if it's something to do with the hobby. So a list of words that are useful and apply to your life specifically. So that is just an example of what the portfolio could look like. Like I said, I use S'more. I list some other tools that you could use, and you might know. Many of my students know about tools I don't know. PowerPoint is an option. Most students have been using PowerPoint this term. Glogster, Infogram, which is actually written with this little period in the middle, and Pictochart are all free tools that can help you make interesting presentations. So there's that list of things you need. Read through those. Do get started this week if you haven't already. It's a big project. You can see from my sample assignment that it is going to take you some time. And I think that's most of what we have for this week. There is another video log this week, so leave some time for that as well. This one's about food, which is very fun. You'll be planning out a menu alla italiana, which means you got to have 4 courses in there at least. And you get to use food vocabulary and talk all about what you're going to eat for your next delicious Italian meal you're planning. Va bene ragazzi, per oggi questo è tutto. Ci vediamo presto. Vi auguro una buona settimana. Ciao!